welcome to Village in Motion. Today is Monday, March 26th, and today we are celebrating National Social Workers Month. And in case you hadn't noticed, this month is also National Noodle Month, it's National Celery Month, and it's National Umbrella Month. So in case you're having trouble finding something to celebrate this month, there are lots of things out there, but today we're going to focus on social workers. And we have here with us today our team of Green Spring social workers. We have Stephanie Rheinheimer.
Good morning.
And Sue Franke and Elena Keydal.
Good morning.
Glad to have you here.
Good to be here.
Let's start by saying that your designation of National Social Worker Month is by your National Association of Social Workers. Mm-hmm. We all have professional associations. What does your association do for you? Elena, I'm going to ask you that question.
Put me in the hot seat.
I am.
So the National Association of Social Workers has been around since 1955, and they're a great advocacy organization. So representing a lot of what social workers believe in terms of policy and advocating up on Capitol Hill, but then also more locally, they provide CEU opportunities to us for.
Wait, what's a CEU?
Continuing training. Continuing education unit, I think is what it stands for, but continuing ed, that's a really important part of our ongoing learning as social workers. And to, as with most licenses, to maintain your social work license, you have to have a certain amount of continuing ed every year.
So social workers have a license, and you must maintain it by having continuing education.
Yep.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah, and then there's usually conventions, both at the state level and I would assume there's a national one every year, so an opportunity for social workers to get together and hear what's going on in the field and what sort of the latest insights and advancements and what our peers are saying and doing and thinking, and just a great opportunity to.
So once you attain your initial education, you're not just thrown out into the world on your own for the next 40 years and then you retire.
No. There's a lot of support among social workers, both informally and then also through NASW. And definitely, I know one thing I was really told when I was going through graduate school was to find a community and find a cohort, as it were, of social workers that you can work with and go to with problems, and just to be able to work together and bounce ideas off of.
And that's really important. I remember my first job in teaching. I was in a little school in a little community, and I didn't have any idea, and I was the only person teaching my subject, and I didn't have any idea what I was doing or whether I was doing it right or wrong, and I would have loved to have a cohort. That's very good advice.
Yeah, and that's one thing we're so blessed here at Green Spring is that the team, we're this great resource to each other, and we really work together well, but we can go to each other with, so I have this issue. How do we manage this? What do we do? And
so
really great
social
help.
workers, let's back up a second. We have social workers here at Green Spring, but what else can social workers do under this national association? Social workers do what out in the world?
Well, social workers are involved in most every facet of our being. We have social workers in the schools that help advocate and help support the kids. We have social workers in the hospitals to help with discharge planning, but also to help anybody that is dealing with a type of a disease. We have social workers that deal with addictions and drug abuse. Social workers sort of infiltrate all different facets of life. Social workers can be therapists as such, to be able to help someone with depression or some type of a mental crisis. So there are just so many different facets of social work. And Elena had talked a little bit about the licensing of the social worker. And there are many different levels of licensure, and each state controls that. So while there is this overall National Association of Social Workers, each state then has control of their own licensing for their social workers. There is a licensed social worker, which is somebody that right out of school can take an exam that would give them this licensed social worker. But then there's a more rigorous licensure, which is called the licensed clinical social worker, the LCSW. And for that, once you have your master's degree, then you need 2 years of uninterrupted work with weekly 1-hour sessions of supervision. So there's a certain number of hours that is required, plus documentation to support the fact that you're doing clinical work. And then there's an exam on top of that, which ends up being a 4 to 5 hour exam. So social workers not only, once they graduate, have that MSW, the Masters of Social Work, then there is the continuing push to become that licensed clinical social worker, which requires a lot more oversight, so that's supervision. And it is recommended for social workers that even once you get the licensed clinical social work, that you always have somebody to be able to help with the supervision, that we're never out on an island, that we are always in coordination with somebody, because you don't ever want to have to make a decision all by yourself. It's something that it's nice to have the support if you come into a critical situation where you can get other ideas to be able to make the best formed decision.
It's not an easy field to be in. It's not something that is, it's not like being a cashier in a grocery store where you just, well, you do this and the customer goes away and the transaction is ended. When you're working with people, you're working with a whole variety of concerns and issues, and there's a lot involved in every interaction, correct?
Correct. No one day is the same. And I don't know about you, but the buzzword in school that just really has stuck in my head is that critical thinking, the ability to think outside the box.
And every situation is different.
Yes.
So let's talk about how each one of you got into social work. Stephanie, now I have to go back many, many years to 1963, and I was looking at schools, and Ohio State University sent me a little postcard. And on the postcard there were various schools within the university that you could enter, and I looked at it, and social work was one that I thought, well, maybe I could pass that. And instead I checked home economics. But why I thought about social work, it was just kind of, well, that kind of sounds interesting, and I did end up studying a lot of sociology. But why did you choose social work?
So my mom is actually a social worker.
Your mother is a social worker, so you knew kind of what was involved.
Exactly. Now we're kind of on the opposite spectrum. She is in foster care with children, but relatively had a good background of what the profession was. And then I really grew up around a lot of people who were in helping professions, counselors, people working in schools, teachers, that sort of thing. So I think early on I knew that was kind of the field I wanted to go into. And luckily enough, I guess it fit the skill sets I felt I had the most strength in. So, but I think my mom had a very strong influence in that.
So you thought, okay, I've been around people who help other people, so you kind of had that background in your family.
Right, exactly.
Yes, and so you went to school where?
So my undergrad degree was at a school a lot of people haven't actually heard of. It's called Eastern Mennonite University.
Okay, and that is where?
It's in Harrisonburg, Virginia. It's 5 minutes from James Madison University. That's the best kind of description I can give. So I went there for undergrad, and then kind of during that experience, a lot of my internships were in continuing care retirement communities such as Green Springs. So really early on in my education is when I started to realize that working with older adults was the kind of social work I was interested in.
Good. Good. And then your graduate work?
So actually, I had a little bit of time off between undergrad and graduate school. So most of my social work in that time period was actually as a hospice social worker. I worked in Charles County, Maryland. So very different, a lot of more of rural social work, a lot of work trying to connect people with resources. And then once I ended up with that, I went to graduate school at George Mason University.
So quite a difference between a very small school and a very large school in an urban setting.
Right, right.
Yes.
And it's actually really cool. I know Elena did the same thing, but in addition to getting my master's in social work, I also got a graduate certificate in gerontology. So a lot of extra
wow.
education just in working with older adults and that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
So you really have focused yourself in the area of working with older adults.
Yes.
And are you happy you made that decision?
I am, very much so.
Good. Well, we're awfully glad you're here.
Yeah.
And you had an internship here at one point.
I did, yeah. So really the connection to being here is during my graduate school training. I was with Sue over here in Village Square for basically a year, I guess 9 months. And so had the opportunity to learn the community and really loved the team of social work and the residents here, and had the opportunity to be offered a position.
We're
a little
glad you
after
decided to
graduating.
stay.
Yeah, me too.
That's terrific. Now, Sue, I remember that you were a Marine.
I was.
How does one go from being a Marine violist to a social worker?
And
Something happened.
That's an interesting connection,
Yes,
because
it
there
is.
is no connection. Actually, when I was in the band, I would say about 20 years into my career, maybe 18 years into my career, I knew that once I retired, whenever that was going to be, that I really wanted to do something else. I'd only ever done music. I started piano when I was 5. Music was the focus all through high school, all through college. I went to Eastman School of Music, so really music had been my total focus. And I had a colleague that I was working with in a different venue who had just completed the program at Virginia Commonwealth University. They had a satellite program up here. And she just was so excited and just very energetic about what she had learned and about the program. And through her experiences, I felt drawn to look into it. And in the process, I determined that with my bachelor's of music, I could indeed start the Master's of Social Work. I didn't, but I had a lot of prerequisites. So I had 5 prerequisites I had to do before I could even start the program. And so I got my Master's of Social Work while I was still in the Marine Band.
Okay.
And graduated. And then after I graduated, I still had 2 more years before I was going to retire. And fortunately, one of my classmates had found that at Fair Oaks Hospital you could do PRN work. So that's sort of...
What is PRN?
I don't know what it stands for, but in nursing terms...
But you were ready.
it's like a substitute, as needed.
Oh, okay.
It's a nursing term for as needed, substitute. And so I worked at Fair Oaks Hospital for 2 years as in between my Marine Band work, my performances, and really determined.
So that was perfect for you.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. So it made it so that I had the experience, so that when I retired, and I live very close to Green Spring, watched the community grow up from nothing to a dirt bike farm, and all the time I was getting the degree, I thought, wouldn't that be neat if I could work there?
You had a plan and didn't know that it could work out.
And keeping my skills and experience at Fair Oaks Hospital allowed me then to be able to apply and have that experience enough to be able to become a social worker here.
That's wonderful.
So it is. It is. And
These are 2 neat stories, how things just worked out. Elena, let's hear your story.
So like Sue, this is a second career for me as well. I actually worked on Capitol Hill as a legislative assistant for about 6 years in the House of Representatives, and then decided I wanted a change and sort of didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was one of those people that always knew they wanted to work on Capitol Hill. I went to college as a politics major who wanted to work on Capitol Hill. I graduated from college as a politics major who wanted to work on Capitol Hill.
This was your dream.
This was what I wanted to do. So when I realized that was no longer what I wanted to do, it was a little startling. But one thing that had always been in the back of my head is sort of if I didn't do this, I might do something different, was counseling. And like Stephanie, my mom's a social worker as well. So I very fortunately had this realization while she was visiting me. And so we had conversations about the difference between social work and counseling and kind of what might draw me to both. And I took about a year and a half and just worked odd jobs to pay the bills, but looked at George Mason's counseling program and their social work program, and I went to the information night on counseling, and I was like, well, this is kind of close, but not quite there. And I went to the social work night, and they were speaking my language. They were speaking about
Something was clicking.
It was just I had found my people. That was very obvious.
That's
so
good.
I went to George Mason, and like Stephanie, then did my second year internship here at Greenspring. And
so you didn't have to do a bachelor's degree in social work. You just built on the bachelor's degree that you had.
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's degree in politics from Mount Holyoke College in Western Massachusetts, and then I had to do a couple prerequisites,
Like Sue?
Like Sue, yeah, with the switch, and then was able to start the 2-year program at George Mason. So.
Well, that's terrific. It's a 2-year program, 2 years master's program.
If you do not have the bachelor's, it's a 2-year program. So yeah.
Interesting.
And social work lends itself very well, the Masters of Social Work lends itself very well to a second career because they have just, the prerequisites are pretty much what a Bachelor of Science is to begin with. And then, especially in the master's program, everything that you need is right there in the program.
Oh, that's
so
terrific.
you hit the ground running and you move forward. So I did it part-time, being that I was working at the same time, but...
Yeah, we all kind of did. And then because I had my bachelor's in social work, I was able to do what they call advanced standing, so I did mine in a year.
So that worked well.
Yeah.
Right.
So she did it in a year,
And 2
Elena
years
in
for you
2
too.
years, and it took me 4 years.
So how did you get here to Greenspring?
So when I was getting ready to do my second year internship, I had done my first year internship with the Fairfax County Area on Aging, and had really, really enjoyed it. And that internship is very much going into people's homes in the community, and so I wanted an internship,
Which is another type of social work.
Absolutely. So I wanted an internship that was a bit more residential, that in a place like Greenspring, that everybody lived in the community. And so I was looking at just different options, and Greenspring was one of them, and so reached out to, at that point, Kathleen Taylor was the social work manager. Reached out to her and just had a really great conversation, and it seemed like a wonderful place to do an internship. And I had a classmate who had done an internship here the year before, and she had nothing but good things to say about it. So was able to do my internship here, and then like Stephanie, a position became open, and I was able to be hired for it. So
Great.
it's great.
Good.
We've been talking about internships for all of the Masters of Social Work programs. It's pretty standard to have 2 internships. So
that's a requirement?
if you're doing a 2-year program, it's an internship both years. The first year, it's generally around 14 hours. It's unpaid. So it's the idea that this is part of your schooling, and then there's a practicum class that goes along with it. So you come in with different situations that are going on. You talk about it in this practicum class, so that the two sort of go together. And in the internship, you always have a supervisor or somebody that's there helping to guide you. And then the second internship is 21 hours a week. So it's a little bit more intense.
For how many months?
The entire time, the entire
For a
semester.
full year?
For a full year.
That is really, really difficult in terms of unpaid. How do you support yourselves during that period of time? That's very, very difficult.
But it's the idea that social work is a hands-on.
That's right.
You learn social work by doing.
Yes.
You can. There's book knowledge,
Yes.
but it's getting in there and talking, and then
Right.
having somebody help you through the process and helping you learn
Right.
how it works.
Well, that brings me to my next question, and don't take this wrong, but this is something that has happened to me in every job that I've ever had, and that is, what does a social worker do all day? And I'll say this, from my background, I've worked many years as a teacher, and people say, well, what do teachers have to do? They just work a few hours a day, and then they go home, and they have summers off. And when I worked for the federal government, well, boy, do you have the easy jobs. Government workers, they just sit and play all day. And so what do social workers do all day? Because here at Green Spring and other places, they say, well, those social workers are never in their offices. They must be out playing someplace all day. And you and I both know that is not the case. So what does a social worker do all day?
Stephanie?
Tell us about your day.
Well, I can assure you, if we're not in our offices, we're not having cocktails somewhere.
I'm sure you're not. What's involved?
Here we do quite a bit of different things. A lot of it falls under a case management position, being that we can help with transitions. So if you have some sort of medical thing come up, we can help you navigate the continuum of care here.
So you might be going to a resident's apartment.
Exactly.
And spending time with that resident and saying, okay, resident, tell me about your difficulty. How can I help you find what you're going to do?
Absolutely, and really one of the taglines that we tell people here is that we're a one-stop shop for resources. So we have great knowledge of the resources available here at Green Spring, but also in the community as well, and really helping people problem solve, coming back to that critical thinking that Sue alluded to, being that helping people determine what do they need to stay independent, to stay in their apartment if that's their wish, or you've got some sort of acute thing coming up, what do you need temporarily? Really helping people in that way and letting them.
I don't think a lot of people realize that you all are there to help us with that.
Oh, yeah.
Because we think, well, independent living, well, we have to figure this all out on our own. And I know I didn't realize that. My mother was in assisted living in Ohio for many years, and I didn't know for a long time that there was a social worker there. And then eventually I realized that she was there and that she could help us realize what were some of the possibilities for Mother and the care for her. And that's something that you can help people do.
Yeah, and actually the great thing here at Green Spring is, we are the 3 social workers here in independent living, but we also have social workers in higher levels of care. So for example, if you're in Garden Ridge for rehab temporarily, we have a social worker there, Amanda Wolf, who we collaborate with for folks who are just there temporarily and will be coming back. And then we also have Melissa Tanev, who does a lot of the long-term care section of Garden Ridge. So
if I'm having difficulties, you can say to me, okay, here's some possibilities for you. Have you thought about this? Did you know about this? I can help you get hooked up with such and such or so and so, and here are some possibilities here, and maybe you didn't know about this.
And what we like to think is one of social workers' best skills is listening, and to really hear where a resident or a patient is coming from, to hear their story, to hear what's going on, so that then we can help them in collaboration with family, with residents, try to figure out what would be the best path. And sometimes...
So you're available to meet with family members also?
Families as well. Yeah,
okay.
We are here as a resource for residents and family.
Okay. And what else happens in your day?
A lot of just coordinating with the other resources in Green Springs. We spend a lot of time working with home support, working with home health, with the short-term rehab over in Garden Ridge, with security, with dining services, with housekeeping. I mean, I could go on and on.
So here I am as a resident, and here you are, and here's everything else. So you can kind of help me.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I have concerns, if I'm not as independent as I once was, you can kind of help me reach out and get these other things.
Right, yeah.
Calm down and help me keep going.
We like to think of ourselves as the middle of the hub. So we're in the middle, and then you have all the other spokes.
So that's what I was
going
doing
out.
here with my hands.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we're in the middle, and we can help coordinate between all the different services, be that liaison between them.
Okay.
As such, with information, with just knowledge of how that might be able to help a resident. So
Yeah, we do a lot of education. It's
Well, you're
just,
educating me because this is certainly information that I didn't know.
not just what resources are available, but what would be appropriate. These are the problems that you may be having, the difficulties you may be having. Is that a normal part of aging, or is there something that we need to be concerned about? And so maybe we need to hook you up with the medical center, or is this, a normal part of aging? And so let's put the resources in place to help you stay independent. And these are your options within that. And so just a lot of education as to what's normal, and then maybe what's a little bit more of a concern that we want to make sure we follow up with and help you navigate.
Excellent. I have just in there, they're flashing a 3-minute sign at me, so I have one more question. I looked in the recent phone book, and I looked under social workers, and there's no such listing. And I found your names under something called resident services. Sue, you explained that to me the other day. What's that about? Can you give us a quick explanation as to why they're not calling you social workers?
It's been a change, and it's more corporate-wide. It's a corporate-wide change because we have a lot of new communities coming on board to the Erickson communities. And a lot of times these new communities don't have enough residents to be able to support a dedicated social worker, a dedicated community resources, a dedicated pastoral ministries. So what they've done is they've taken it and sort of, because of these newer communities, lumped it all together. Now here at Green Spring, the resident services coordinators are social workers. All 3 of us have master's degrees in social work. We are social workers. And so the title here at Green Spring, I think, is more of a formality to conform to the corporate title, so that we are all called the same thing, so that when corporate talks about certain positions within the different communities, that's where we are identified. So here at Green Spring, our role has not changed at all. Nothing that we do has changed in any form or fashion.
Sometimes you can just be a little harder to locate.
That's it.
So we are very fortunate that we have a large community, so that we have dedicated social workers.
Yes.
And that's excellent, and we hope you'll stay.
That's our plan.
That's our plan too. Well, we thank you for coming today. We thank you for the education about social workers, and congratulations on National Social Workers Month. And we'll look forward to celebrating with you again next year.